and welcome to another episode of Political Dregs. I am Calvin Robinson. I am the former youth officer for Hampstead Conservative Association. Joining me today on the Political Dregs is Amir, former deputy chair of the Hammersmith Conservative Association, Hamish Hunter, former deputy chair political of Holborn St Pancras Conservative Association, and Joel Davidson, former deputy leader of the Conservative group on Brent Council. How are we doing, guys?
Good evening.
How's it going?
Very well, thank you, Calvin.
So we've had a really good question on our channel in the comments section from a YouTuber called The Prenty. He's one of Scotland's best barmen. He's won awards for it several times. And he says he has a topic that he would like us to discuss about the Scottish independence. And basically he says that he thinks he voted to not leave the United Kingdom the first time around in the vote because he thought the Conservatives would keep us in the European Union. And now that we're leaving the European Union, he would like to vote to leave the United Kingdom, which is a controversial stance, I think. 62% of Scotland voted Remain, so I can see where it's coming from. It's a tricky one. I think David Cameron genuinely thought we would stay, and when he said that if you vote to stay in the United Kingdom, you're voting to stay in the EU, I think he meant that. I don't think that was a lie or a mistruth, but we have, as an entire nation, voted to leave the European Union, and I think we're stronger together as a United Kingdom. I think it would be silly of Scotland to leave at this point, and I would miss Scotland from the Union. What do you guys make of this?
Well, as a sort of token Scot, I'm going to exercise my rights to go first on this. I think that what's really interesting since devolution is the development of a really separate political culture and political scene in Scotland. We see that most markedly with the SNP, who have been in government now in Holyrood for a long time and who've got huge numbers of seats in the House of Commons. And one of the things that I've been struck by in this campaign, as I was struck by in previous campaigns, is how we seem to have two separate general elections going on, one in Scotland and one in England, and actually probably a third obviously going on in Northern Ireland. With the Brexit thing, I always think that the SNP are slightly on difficult territory, because not only does leaving the United Kingdom mean that they will have to then make the argument to go back into the European Union. But of course, traditionally, their sort of core old support has been quite Eurosceptic. You know, they used to be known as the Tartan Tories because they had that, base in East Scotland, which was a bit sort of, they missed Bonnie Prince Charlie and they all wore Highland gear and it was all slightly sort of twee. So there are a number of people, I think, who voted for independence, who voted to leave the European Union. So I don't think you can say, well, every Brexiteer, or rather every independence person also wants to leave the European Union. But I do think we have a problem, and I think it's mainly because devolution has allowed it, that we are getting further and further away as a political system, and that is demonstrated by the fact that the SNP have had such success. And I worry about that because I am a unionist. I believe in the United Kingdom, and I think there are lots of different reasons why advocating the United Kingdom to stay together is different from advocating staying in the EU. I think that's a silly argument, and it doesn't hold water.
Completely ridiculous, yeah.
But I worry about the divergence in our political system.
But why have we allowed? It's the terminology that annoys me. Why do we allow the Scottish to call themselves a government? They're not a government; it's an assembly. So it's things like that. They try to have sort of a foreign. Then have an external affairs spokesman and things like that. That when they don't, foreign policy is not devolved to them. So they've just gradually creeped out. There's essentially been mission creep from the SNP to assume the identity of the Scottish nation, which is very frustrating to unionists because the SNP is not Scotland, and they think that they think they are. I find them quite a sinister organisation, the SNP, actually, especially with some of their policies, like the named person and then this strange bairn box that they came up with, where every single newborn baby in Scotland got this box funded by the SNP. Very, very strange stuff. So I find them very, very disingenuous and very creepy in some ways. Some of their policies. It's sort of a mixture of nationalism and, dare I say it, socialism.
Well, no, exactly, and we all know how that ends up.
Yeah.
This highlights the problem with Brexit. Really, you're talking about Scotland.
Not like you, Amir, to bring up Brexit. Go on.
I'm shocked.
I voted Leave with you guys.
Nah.
We campaigned together. In the same
Yeah.
I was very enthusiastic about leaving the EU because we're all Eurosceptics in some way or form. That being said, I didn't even contemplate that Scotland would consider leaving after we left the EU, and this is a real problem.
Yeah, but Scotland just don't. Someone needs to make the case very explicitly. Scotland is part of the United Kingdom, whether they like it or not. They had the chance to vote to leave the United Kingdom. They chose not to. That's that matter closed. Separate issue, the referendum.
Look, I'll tell you what it is, because that sounds a bit harsh. So one of the things that Prentice said is that he feels that Scotland is often neglected and it's all about England, And as a Midlander, I can appreciate that because a lot of people in the Midlands, a lot of people in the north of England think that everything's London-centric and everything's all about London. And I think that's because it is. I think for so long, the focus has been on the capital. We haven't built infrastructure anywhere else in the country or the Union. We haven't really focused on anything else. That's what we need to do to reassure Scotland that we care.
But the problem is, I think that has been exacerbated, not helped, by devolution.
Yes.
And I don't support devolution. I think, as Joel said, they talk about a Scottish government and the Scottish Parliament, and these are just sort of sops that they're given to stop independence. And as a Tory, emotionally and sort of sympathetically, I am very attracted to the thin end of the wedge argument, even though I know it's not always the best one. But you give them a bit, it's never going to be enough. No. They want more and more and more. Yeah. And one of the things that exaggerates SNP support, therefore this feeling that there is, huge momentum behind independence, is the fact that the first part of the post system throws up 40 to 50 SNP members of Parliament, when in some of those constituencies there's a unionist majority, whether it be more Labour or Liberal or Conservative unionist majority. And actually, I've wondered whether we should actually think about having a sort of, in some areas, perhaps having a unionist candidate, because what we really need to do, and that's going to be difficult to put, I don't know if Labour are really a unionist party anymore, but the Liberals certainly are. Yeah. We need to get those SNP MPs back to their sort of Plaid Cymru levels, where they can get up in the House of Commons and wear a bit of tartan and, be a bit strange like Liz Savile-Roberts or that guy with the unpronounceable name from Wales. Yeah.
But this one-party state is very alarming in Scotland, especially going to an organisation like them. And it's, there's so many strange things about the SNP, all the Alex Salmond stuff now, and God, Ian Blackford, can you get more annoying? Can you be a more annoying man?
But it's so fake. It's so fake. It's not. They like to talk about this sort of civic nationalism, but actually, the history of Scotland, the best Scots, the success of the Scots, is British, and it's not because they are tiny little bit players in Britain. They are the leaders. These are the men who invented economics. These are the men and women who went out and forged the empire. Scotland is not this twee little Alex Salmond, Nicola Sturgeon, shortbread and Highlands and William Wallace bullshit. It is Britain, and it is strong, and it is engineering, and it's Glasgow University being the centre of the Enlightenment way before it came down here to England. And we need to make that case. And I think David Cameron, he got the Scottish referendum result that he wanted by the skin of his teeth, but he did the same thing in the European referendum, and it didn't work because it was all, because those two issues I think are fundamentally different, and I really disagree with Amir about that. But we need someone to actually make that case for unionism. And yes, Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland are ignored, and I think that's partly hugely to do with the fact that we're allowing this divergence in politics.
But I mean, I think the frustration with Brexit being delayed for so long has meant that we've not been able to focus on the benefits of not being in the EU, and once again what the UK as a whole means anymore. And of course, we are so much stronger with a natural single market in the British Isles, as has been the case for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so, Scotland, Sturgeon's case falls completely to pieces when, she on the one hand has actively stirred up problems for the UK in trying to leave the EU, but on the other hand, and such as insisting on a open border, etc., etc. And on the other hand, of course, she does not rule out having some kind of hard border between England and Scotland. I mean, it's totally ludicrous.
Yeah, when we actually leave the EU, that case for independence is going to become very, very difficult.
I think you guys you guys are completely off the ball right now. You've missed it. You're totally making. You're blaming Scotland. You're blaming the SNP for a problem that was created by David Cameron. The majority of Scottish people voted to remain in the EU.
Yeah, but Scotland is in the UK.
But I mean, it doesn't add up.
So should London stay in the EU and the rest of the England leave?
Should Oxford stay in the EU?
The point is this: Scotland is its own nation. It's its own people, and
Oxford is its own nation. Bath.
No, I think we can all agree that Scotland, unlike London and Oxford and Cambridge and all those other rather metropolitan liberal elite places, Scotland is different. Scotland is a nation, and yes, it did vote to leave the EU. But do you really think, Amir? Do you really think that? Sorry,
vote to remain in the EU.
Sorry, voted to remain in the EU. Do you really think that's the only thing that's driving?
Not the only thing, but you're blaming the SNP. You're blaming Scotland for where we handed them the ammunition and the weapon, and we actually loaded the gun for them. We've given Nicola Sturgeon the best thing that she could have dreamed of, which is leaving the EU. This helps her actually, because she lost the Scottish referendum vote, and now she's been able to bring back the topic back to the agenda. And I
don't think I agree that if we had if the UK had voted to remain, then that obviously wouldn't have been so powerful for her to make that argument. But I don't believe that the people who voted remain and the people who want independence are all the same people. There will be Tory unionists, and there are Tory unionists who think, we should stay as a country, whatever happens with Brexit. And there will be SNP voters who really want independence, who have always wanted independence, but don't want to be in the EU.
Yeah, my unionism trumps easily my leave status, status, as these two would say. So just for the record, I would prefer to stay in the EU, but for Northern Ireland to stay in the UK, for instance, just on balance. Which is so that's because I'm a unionist first and foremost. So that's maybe breaking news, but yeah, I would now support, given the situation where we are, I would not risk anything that would jeopardise the Northern Ireland not staying in the UK.
No.
And the point is, Hamish,
I don't agree with that.
You would rather Northern Ireland became independent,
separated,
and that the rest of the rump then left the EU. You'd be happy with that. You'd be happy with.
I would. It's not a question of me being happy with that, but
but that was the analogy that I've made.
Well, no, that wasn't the analogy you made. If the question was, you won't leave the European Union as the UK or the rump of the UK unless Northern Ireland can't come with you, then I don't think we should be tied to the European Union just because one of the four nations won't put up. And now it's not a real situation, right? It's not going to happen. But if the question was, well, you can't leave the European Union because Northern Ireland gets a veto over the whole thing, then I say, well, Northern Ireland can go its own way.
Yeah, that's where I would diverge.
Going back to what I
That
was
shows
saying,
what a bit I am, and also,
Also-
I mean, my family's from Northern Ireland.
Yeah, and I don't just mean of Northern Ireland. I mean Scotland or
Hamish, basically, I speak to people every day on the doorstep, and it's exactly what you're saying, but the other way. So you have people who voted Remain, soft conservatives, and they're
I
willing.
think we call them Lib Dems, don't we?
No, we call them the Wets.
No, they're
Or Joel.
anyway, they're conservatives.
Very rarely have I been called that in London. But
Anyway,
yeah.
they're not conservatives, or they're conservatives, and they're on the kind of left of the party. And they are Remainers. They all voted Remain. However, they are now, well, not all of them, but a portion of them are now accepting Brexit, and they will vote Conservative to, as Calvin always said, to get Brexit done. But the point is,
Because they're Democrats.
the same thing is going to happen in Scotland. They're going to be people, like you said, they're going to be people who would rather stay in the UK Union, but because of everything that's happened, they're going to vote for independence.
I would almost call their bluff on an independence referendum. Let them. I think the Scots would still vote to stay in the UK anyway, even if you gave them another chance,
We just
because they
had
know
one.
that. No,
Well,
I don't.
especially if we left, because
I don't think there should be one, but I don't think the result would be any different.
Right.
So I think when push comes to shove, people would choose to stay in the UK.
I suspect that if we do legally leave the European Union before there is an opportunity for a next independence referendum, that the SNP will go quite cold on the idea, because the notion of putting forward not remaining in European Union membership, which, by the way, the European Union haven't said that they would allow an independent Scotland to do. They've been very clear that an independent Scotland would not be a successor state. It would have to apply from the outside, which means the euro, which means Schengen.
Yeah.
They
There's
let
all
them
these sorts of
annoy
things.
us.
And that's just not going to happen. I mean, these people, the SNP, can't even say how they would use the pound sterling. They say they would use it in an unauthorized way, like Panama uses the US dollar. I mean, it's a joke.
But this is why they lost, because the SNP are a joke. They're a terrible party. If it was another party leading this, they might have won it. Look at what they've done with the healthcare system. Look at what they've done with education. Scottish education used to be the best in the kingdom. And now look at it. It's a disgrace.
I agree. So what I would say to your viewer is two things. First of all, I think the reason it's because it's all about England. It's all about England is a byproduct of devolution, because things like health and education and others are very much Hollywood matters, and so our sort of national Westminster politics has restricted itself. But the other, or rather, restricted its focus to what are England or England and Wales issues. The other thing I would say is that I think unionism in Scotland, the people representing unionism, which is the Conservatives, the Liberals, the Labour people, no doubt, are doing a bad job of selling that, and they need to, we have a bit of a crisis, and we need to sort that out.
You can't sort it out because Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to remain. This is the problem.
I just don't think.
There
doesn't
weren't
work like
individual
that.
vetoes from the nations as part of the deal going into that
doesn't work.
referendum.
Obviously not. But the
But
problem,
if we could ask you, maybe your viewer might want to tell us if he'd be happy with Scotland being independent and using the euro.
Get back to us, Prenty. Thank you very much for the question,
Get
though.
back on that. Would he be happy with that, or would he rather that they remained in the UK and used sterling?
That's a good
Interesting one.
point. Anyone else, please do give us questions. We're happy to discuss them on the live stream. And I think that wraps up the Scotland debate for now. All right, so we've discussed foreign policy, we've discussed home affairs. Let's talk about the general election campaign and how it's going so far. Obviously, we're all out campaigning every day. Obviously, Amir's campaigning more than most of us. Amir, any news this week? What's going on, mate?
well, it started off bad and it ended bad, basically.
I saw you went viral. I don't know if you want to bring it up.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about it now. So I was outside Fulham Broadway handing leaflets, helping Nicola Horlick with her campaign to win Chelsea and Fulham. And we obviously, with the Lib Dems, one of the catchphrases is to stop Brexit. And then while I was there,
I thought it was
this
bollocks
guy
to Brexit.
getting abusive. He started to saying, go back to your fucking country. What are you doing? Fuck you, etc., etc. And I didn't have a response, so I just got my camera out and started recording. And then he looked at me. He saw that I had a camera. About 10 seconds later, I think he was considering what to say, but he wanted to say something, and it's a shame he didn't swear. And then he said, if you don't like Brexit, don't live here, go live abroad. So he was deadly serious, and he was very upset with me for campaigning to stop Brexit. And, you know, I was really affected by that. Then he went over to the security. He told the security to eject me from the Fulham Broadway, kind of the entrance, the centre bit where it goes into the tube. About 10 minutes later, the security came out. There was about 2 or 3 of them. And actually, they couldn't do anything because I wasn't in the centre. I was on the pavement. And he started his friend started getting a little bit abusive. He was saying, get out of here. What are you doing? We have to pay for a license. You're not paying anything to be here, etc. And then he was like, I'm going to call the police. I said, fine, go call the police. And he said, well, why don't you call the police? And I said, I don't need to. I know I'm not doing anything illegal. And then he was just trying to incite me to call the police. And I didn't call the police. And then I think they just got tired and they slowly kind of went to do their things. So I posted the video on Twitter, and it kind of went crazy.
Yeah, I got it from different sources, actually, people who didn't know you at all. So it was quite funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got sent it. I think the guy must have been a Chelsea fan.
Or Spurs.
Spurs. I bet giving it.
Who knows? Maybe a football fan.
Can we just be like upfront about this? I've seen the video. I didn't know anything what Amir's just said before I'd seen the video, and I've seen the video. There's nothing wrong with the video. The guy literally just says, if you don't like Brexit, live somewhere else. That's not racist. That's not hateful. That is just, if you don't like it, move on. What's wrong with that?
Yeah,
the amount of retweets in the comments, everyone's jumping on the bandwagon.
Isn't the whole point of Brexit to removing our freedom of movement? So, I mean, I can't even go to another country.
Well, that's obviously...
You can, because we haven't left.
And also...
you lived in France for a couple of years. You know how it works.
Yeah, and look, I mean, a couple of things here. First of all, it doesn't sound like it was a very pleasant situation at all, and I'm sorry you had to go through that. I think we all know, as people who've been out on the doorstep, that we had a fair bit of abuse. I mean, I remember the sort of the vitriol I'd get from the fucking socialists down in Dartmouth Park with their Range Rovers outside and their £12 million houses for being a Tory. Yeah. But the video itself, he didn't say go back to your own country. You say that he did before then. That is clearly racist. He's a thug. He's a nasty individual, and it's appalling. I don't necessarily agree with the sort of kind of thing that you're slightly pushing towards, which I think a lot of people who commented on your tweet picked up on, which is that essentially Brexit is a racist endeavour. I don't agree with that, and in fact, one of the reasons that I supported leaving the European Union was because I didn't think we should prioritise immigration to this country from one set of nations over another. Why should Romanians have the right to come and live and work here unrestricted when Indians, Pakistanis don't? It doesn't make any sense to me, and that's one of the reasons why I supported Leave, so that we could have a sort of nationality, race-blind immigration system. But you know, it is unpleasant when you get abuse on the doorstep or on the street, and a lot of people feel that once you put a rosette on of whatever colour, that gives them license to behave towards you in a way that no person on the street would behave to someone else. And
that's volunteering for political parties, isn't it? You get treated incredibly badly by all sorts of from all sorts of angles, but
including from within, of course.
Well, certainly.
But, I mean, this happens.
But you're giving up your time for this, so that's the fundamental thing. A lot of people don't. It happens all the time.
Look, I think Hamish is much more diplomatic and a lot politer than I am. But this video was it was race baiting. It was sensationalizing, and that's what all the comments and all the retweets have been about. It's been trying to plug that Brexit is racist, and it's the Lib Dems pushing that.
I'm not. Look, the video is very clear. What he said is very clear. I've told you a little bit about the background, but this happens all the time. This isn't a one-off. Every single day, I always come across one or two people who make insinuating comments, who make some really vicious statements. And it's not like I can't like take my camera out and go around recording, you know. Maybe I should put a GoPro on my head and start campaigning.
No, so you're right. That is horrible. You shouldn't receive abuse, definitely not. But you can protect against it. A lot of my Brexit Party friends wear body cams because the Brexit Party get a lot of vitriol, especially from the Lib Dems. A lot of abuse just for being there, for just for existing. So you can have a body cam and protect yourself in that way.
One of the things you said at the beginning of this segment, Calvin, that we've all been out campaigning on the doorstep. I haven't at all this campaign, and I've actually had the opportunity to watch this campaign as a voter, as a resident. But I remember one of the things that when I was putting on a rosette and going out or going to council, going to about the constituency, I'd always go up to. If you came across Labour or Liberal people, go up and have a chat, or if you're telling at a polling station, be friendly. And people sometimes found that odd. Some people in my own party found that odd. But there's a baseline of civility, which, as I said, sometimes people think that they have license not to obey because they don't like the colour of the ribbon on your lapel. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to say, just some observations as a layperson not pounding the streets and delivering leaflets in Hampstead and Kilburn, which is the constituency I live in. It's quite interesting, this election. In 2010, the Conservatives were 42 votes behind. It was the most marginal seat on the mainland. By 2017, the last election, the Labour MP Tulip Sadiq had got a majority of about 15 or 17,000.
Astonishing. How did that happen?
Well, I think there are a lot of different reasons, but what's been really interesting for me in a Conservative ward of the constituency is I've only got Liberal leaflets, right? I must have got 7 or 8. I've got some direct mail from the Liberals, and how they don't have me down as a Brexiteer, right-wing Tory Thatcher.
I got that thing. I got the thing on the NHS.
I got something on health as well. But what's really interesting is the Conservatives seem to have given up here. And I don't know whether that's because this constituency was heavily Remain or because they're all up the road in Barnet trying to hold on to those seats, which is probably what they should be doing. But it's a real marked difference. There are no Conservative posters. There aren't very many Labour posters. The Liberal Democrats are going hammer and tongs at it. It looks like the polls are showing that that's not working for the Lib Dems nationally, and it'll be interesting to see how well they do in these metropolitan Liberal.
It really will. I mean, Amir, look, you've been critical of the revoke policy, which I think has been damaging nationally and has really been cost you a lot of the momentum that you needed in the last couple of weeks of the campaign. But at the very least, that extreme revoke policy should work in some of these seats that you really want to win in metropolitan areas like London.
Not just that, on the ballot paper, it's going to be Lib Dems to stop Brexit.
Yeah, so therefore that's a high risk. So that's an extreme policy. Don't think it was a good idea nationally, but at the very least, it should deliver you some extra seats in specific areas such as West London. So we really will be interested to see how that one pans out. And
sorry, I just agree with that. I think when we spoke about this on the first episode, I think it was, I said that the Stop Brexit Revoke policy was a great tactic to go from 13 seats to 20 or maybe 40 seats. I think that the problem is that the Lib Dems might not even do that, partly because as the campaign gets on, the votes narrow and people focus between who they want in number 10, Boris or Jeremy Corbyn. But also because they've overstretched themselves. I mean, I keep hearing things about how Dominic Raab in the Esher and Walton seat down in Surrey is in trouble. He's got a 23,000 majority now. Maybe there are some special circumstances there, but it would seem to me that the Lib Dems are much better off looking at places like Cheltenham, looking at places like St Albans, and those sorts of places. Maybe even Hampstead and Kilburn and Chelsea. And those sorts of places, than sort of going over these bizarre, big, scalps for election night. And maybe they're overstretched.
I think you're right, Hamish. I think the Lib Dem strategy from the beginning was over ambitious. I think they overstretched, and the whole idea of winning an election with 300 and I don't know how many, 30 seats or more. I mean, you have to campaign across the whole country, and I don't think the Liberal Democrat setup was able or capable of delivering that kind of result with the kind of campaigning machine at their hands. Now, the Liberal Democrats are very good at targeted, focused campaigns. They're very good at by-elections. And if they would have gone for a kind of a more conservative target range, like maybe even 80 seats, and just focused on 80 or 40 or 80.
Look how important that would be in terms of
huge.
They would have held the balance of power.
The Brexit
the same is true, and the same I was going to say of true, because it's not the Brexit Party tactic, Calvin, and it should.
But no, it is going forward. I think it is.
Well, you say that, but you look at that, look at the data, and you see Yvette Cooper holding on to her seat because she's got 40% of the vote, but the Tories plus Brexit Party are 50, but she's going to win and she's going to come through the middle. And the Brexit Party should have done that from the beginning, maybe with Conservative assistance. And I know we've covered that before, but there are obviously seats that the Brexit Party are better placed. Yeah. And by the way, I think that nut job in Peterborough, standing for the Conservatives, should decide for the Brexit Party candidate because he's clearly more well placed to stand and win.
Mike's a good local
Peterborough
guy,
is going to be a Labour seat because the Leave vote is split, and it's the same for the Lib Dems. But my one takeaway from just being a resident,
whoever came second in that in Peterborough, who came so the Brexit? Oh, because the
Brexit Party came second in the by-election, yeah.
But there's seats in Leicester, there's seats in Luton. There's a lot of seats that the Brexit Party could really, really focus on. Hartlepool.
But that we used to be a Conservative seat. I hope Paul Bristow wins that.
Well, he's not going to. I don't really care whether it's a Conservative or a Brexit person who wins the seat. I want someone who is not going to try and frustrate Brexit in the first instance.
I agree with you, and
that's why I would say I would want.
And it's the same is true for the Lib Dems and Remain, I presume.
I suppose the argument that you'd want a Conservative, it would be that they would vote for Boris's deal, obviously, for this very narrow tactical reason. And you don't know, a Brexit Party could be a wild card like CR. You don't know what they're going to vote for. So,
I don't think how much of a wild card, mate.
Hamish, you're absolutely right.
He is right, and we're going to do more on this because I think next week there's going to be some announcements that's going to help the Brexit Party and the Conservative Party get Brexit done, and we'll come back to that next week when you know more. So that's been a good discussion about the campaign so far this week. I think that's a nice place to wrap it up. All right, that's been another episode of Political Dregs. Thank you very much to the viewers. Thank you to the commenters. Please remember to like, subscribe, and comment below. Goodbye from me, Calvin. Also, Joel, Hamish, and Amir.
Goodbye.
Bye.
See you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Anyway, I'll let my brother get on with this. Because he's a focus, I can tell. I need to rub his shoulders a little bit. Hold on. Yeah, ready. Hold on, bro. There we go.
This is it.
Right.
No. Mum, اگه میخوای جوش کنی الان سریع بکن. Sorry, my mum wanted to boil some water and I told her not.
So is this going to be just what local stuff, and then we'll just do some thoughts on the national campaign after that?
Together, just do it together. Together.
Okay.
I don't want to do anything too long.
Speak for yourself, love.
We're already an hour in, so.
Are we?
Yes.
Yeah, it's long.
Mate, we need to cut down that fucking.
Oh, there's loads to cut down from China.
Well, but also the terrorist shit.
Put your belly away, mate.
Hamish is going, woohoo!
Mate, you've turned me straight.
Just 1 minute.
Can you tell Ali to move his shiny head from the mirror, please?
Yeah.